From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. So we know that a lot of folklore, especially the ancient legends, are attempts by communities of the time to interpret the world around them. That's why so much folklore attempts to explain the behavior of animals, right? Because we have to remember this is before the era of television. In many cases, this is before the era of the written word. So folks were living much more closely to the natural world. And it's no surprise then that they would have these explanations about things that at times seemed inexplicable. If you look at the stories of indigenous American communities, especially in the Pacific Coast area and the Great Lakes, you'll see that many have these surprisingly similar legends about enormous predatory birds, like birds that will eat you, even if you're the size of Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, yes. Well, and they have, many of them have special powers, like paranormal-like powers. In several of the legends, I saw the description that their wings are so large and powerful when they flap. Thunder or lightning was associated. I think thunder, right? Like, hence Thunderbirds, right? But then also, you know, that if you see one in the sky, perhaps the lightning that you're seeing is actually emanating from the thing's eyes and not from the sky itself, but this bird is creating it.
Right. And that the water falling from their bodies may be the origin point of rain or floods, that they are harbingers of storms or harbingers of other natural phenomena, including earthquakes. In the lore of the Passamaquoddies, there's a story of two people who run into an actual Thunderbird because they are on a quest high into the mountains to discover the source of thunder and lightning. And they find that it is a huge bird, and it's not a particularly cool bird. These things were treated like Godzilla in the folklore. You know, Godzilla has now, in the recent films, Godzilla has assumed kind of a nature spirit status. Like, Godzilla is a protector. It's not necessarily a villain. It's just so big and so powerful that humans are insignificant to its existence. And that's kind of like what a Thunderbird was, or how it was treated. There are stories about it going full on Pacific Rim Godzilla style kaiju fights, like blockbuster movie level conflicts with other large animals or nature spirits. There's one where a Thunderbird fights a huge killer whale, and the battle just wrecks the entire area. Trees are flattened, the ground is shaking. In retrospect, if you look back on that legend, it sounds like it might be a way to explain an earthquake, right? But also, you know, in the defense of these mythological creatures, they weren't all bad, right?
No. Well, with many legends like this, there's a perception that just because something has a ton of power and it, you know, holds a special place within the cultural framework, that doesn't mean that it's all bad. It means that perhaps there's a benevolent side to this creature, this power of nature. And I think there are a couple stories of it where it would actually assist tribes in finding food if they were, you know, going through a time where they were in lack of food. Mm-hmm. Or it would, like, you know, fly in a specific area or in a direction where they could acquire something like that.
Yeah, it could lead you places if you treated it with respect. And that was always one of the key components of the story. They were also at times moral compasses, forces of judgment. You'll find some stories in indigenous communities arguing that the Thunderbird is responsible for punishing people who break social taboos or moral codes. And in the Ojibwe specifically, the bird is thought to have been created by a cultural hero named Nanabosho, who created the bird as a way of moving the cycles of the natural world, from winter to spring to summer and so on. But there's an interesting wrinkle here, because we opened at the top saying that this was a regional cryptid. That's true, sort of. Kind of the way that people would say Bigfoot is a mostly Pacific Northwest thing, but the Yeti exists in the Himalayas, right? Or the skunk ape or swamp ape exist in other parts of the world. And we find something similar to that here. It should already be pretty fascinating that so many indigenous communities on these first two continents have a similar story about a giant bird that you just don't want to mess with. It can cause earthquakes. It can cause storms. They're oddly specific in the mythology and folklore, but it's not unique. In fact, we found that multiple communities, many of whom never had contact with each other, also have myths about something very like a Thunderbird. Oh, yeah.
If you look to South Africa, you can see tales of something called the Kwane. I think that's how you would say it. Thekwane. It's also known as Ipindulu, or guess what? Very similarly, lightning bird.
There it is.
Snap.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the folklore of the Zulu or the Pondo where this occurs, that folklore is independent from the folklore of Native American populations, at least as far as we know. And this is so weird because this is like the Thunderbird's evil brother. Like in Lion King, Mufasa is the good lion, right? And then he's got his brother, Scar, who's a real pill. So this lightning bird is different from a Thunderbird because it has some of the same powers, but it's also vampiric. It thirsts for blood, and it works with witch doctors and masters of the occult. It attacks them. It can also, side note, transform into a very attractive male human to seduce women. And the rubber hits the road in the world of folklore sometimes. There have been cases where murders are committed because somebody suspects that a person is, in fact, a lightning bird in human form. That's actually happened. It's not a joke. It's a tragic thing. Of course, those explanations don't hold up in court. And we still have, I think, some more stuff to dive into in the role of witchcraft accusations on the African continent specifically, and the Mediterranean as well. But yeah, long story short, there are tons of stories about things that are very much like Thunderbirds across the world, even if they're not called specifically Thunderbirds. In Chilean and Argentinian mythology, in Maori mythology, you find similar things. And the Maori case is really interesting, too, because of the preponderance of large flightless birds in that part of the world. And I don't know about you, man, but I don't trust flightless birds.
I don't know if it's a matter of trust for me. There's just something off about them. I mean, I think it has something to do with just having large wings still. If you look at an emu or something like that, or an ostrich, and you see its giant wings that it can stretch out the way another bird can, but it just hangs out with them. Like, it's almost like it's got its hands in its pockets all the time.
There we go.
I don't know. It just weirds me out.
I've been watching or looking into this. I was watching videos of people who have rescued large flightless birds and seem to form affectionate bonds with them, but it's still crazy. There's something uncanny about it. It feels very much like they are from a different world or a different time. And again,
we didn't even mention their long necks, Ben.
Oh no, yeah,
really long necks.
It's so weird because you can see people petting them, and they have like their necks will like crane around the shoulders, or they'll snuggle up inside of someone. I don't know, man. It's like a fun doodle with a head, like the pool toy, but it wants you to die.